name is Clive Bates. I run a sustainability and public health consultancy, independent of any commercial vested interests. I used to be a civil servant, and prior to that I used to be the director of Action on Smoking and Health in the United Kingdom, the main anti-smoking organisation, and I've been an advocate for tobacco harm reduction for 25 years.
How do you assess the potential impact of emerging smoking products such as heated tobacco, vaping, oral pouches on public health, particularly in terms of smoking cessation, harm reduction and overall tobacco-related disease burden?
But we have a massive worldwide problem with people dying from smoking. Around 8 million people per year die from smoking. That's more or less the same as the number of people who died worldwide from COVID-19 in 2020 and then 2021. It's massive. Okay, so if people are going to use nicotine, and they are, the drug nicotine, people like it, it makes them feel better, for whatever reason, helps them function better, then if they can move from high-risk forms of nicotine use, which is like smoking, to low risk, which are all the smoke-free products like vaping, pouches, heated tobacco, smokeless tobacco and so on, then you can get a massive improvement in overall public health, reductions in cancer, cardiovascular disease, respiratory illnesses and so on. So it's a massive public health opportunity to get people to use nicotine differently. We know that nicotine itself isn't the main problem. It's the reason why people smoke, but they die from the particles of smoke and the toxic gases that transport the nicotine into the lungs. That's what does the damage. You get rid of the smoke, you get rid of almost all of the health risks.
What are the consequences of avoiding all risks?
Well, no one can avoid all risks. Everything comes with some sort of risk. Look, the question is, are people going to use nicotine? And I think the answer is yes, and they'll do it for good reasons, because it makes them feel better, it makes them function better, or whatever. So the question is are there ways of using that in a way that is much less dangerous than smoking? And the answer is yes, there are. There are these various smoke-free options like vaping, like nicotine pouches that you take orally, like smokeless tobacco, like heated tobacco. And the more that we can get people who are going to use nicotine, whether we like it or not, to switch to those products instead of smoking, then the better the public health outcome. I don't think anybody has set up the regulatory environment that would maximize the benefits from this. I don't think anybody's doing it really well, but there are some spectacular successes. For example, cigarette consumption has fallen by about a half in Japan. There's been an incredibly rapid decline in smoking amongst indigenous populations in New Zealand, coinciding with a very rapid rise in vaping. The lowest rates of smoking in the world, and also the lowest rates of smoking-related disease amongst male snus users in Sweden. Smoking prevalence in Sweden is down to around 5%, but people use just as much nicotine in a much safer way through smokeless tobacco. To be honest, we could go so much further. We could if we had very strong information campaigns, we had risk proportionate regulation where you're very tough on cigarettes, but you focus on consumer protection for vaping and the other products. And if we had a tax system that properly incentivized moving from high risk to low risk products, then we could go much faster. But it requires that everybody involved, all the influential people, to want to make it work. And at the moment, unfortunately, particularly in the EU, we have people who want to stop it working, and unfortunately they are the ones protecting the cigarette trade from competition from much safer products.
The scientific evidence presented at this conference shows that reduced risk products should be regulated differently than the traditional ones. On the contrary, decision makers tend to assimilate them with traditional products. How would you respond to that? What is your advice for?
My advice to regulators is that you should have a single coherent regulatory system for tobacco and nicotine products that encourages people either to quit smoking or to move from the high-risk products to the low-risk products, okay? So that means that you place the toughest regulations on the smoking products. So you ban the advertising, you have high levels of tax, you have very strong warnings and plain packaging, you strongly restrict where they can be sold and all of that. Then on the safer products, you focus on consumer protection. You want to have encouraging messages, encouraging people to switch. You want much lower rates of taxation. You want packaging that people find appealing when they're moving from high risk to low risk products and so on. So you have to differentiate the regulatory and fiscal approach according to risk. And if you do that, you can persuade people to move from high risk to low risk and benefit their health. You're encouraging them doing that. And you back that up with information campaigns that properly communicate the reduced risk. Then all of these things would feed off each other and you would be able to move much faster away from the smoking era and into a different era where people are just much less harmed by using nicotine.